My name is Paul Nelson. I don't think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. And my name is Paul Nelson. I'm the co-president of the Woodlands Green. And I appreciate everybody being here again and taking time to share with us. A special speaker, Teri MacArthur, is going to speak. I think before we get started on her lecture on invasive species and what's going on in the woodlands with that, and I'll introduce her after Deborah Wymore, who is also a board member and a co-president of the Woodlands Green currently. And I want to say thank you to I can't see everybody that's here, but any of the board members that are here that helped make this possible, and all the members, we appreciate it. So Deborah, if you want to speak about the Woodlands Green itself and being a part of it.
Certainly. Yep. So we've got a slide on the screen for everybody to see now. The Green has been around since 1989, and I'm sure many of those tuned in tonight have been to the events, been with the Green in different lectures over the years. I think I've been a member over 25 years. Kathy pushing 30. Kathy Herrick's also online tonight. And many, many members, including our speaker, is a lifetime member. So we have a lot of different programs and activities to get involved in. And there's a QR code on this slide to learn more about the Green. You just can put your smartphone to photograph, and it will pull up a link to the Woodlands Green website, or the old-fashioned way on your laptop or on your phone, the woodlandsgreen.org. to find out all the things that are going on. And that's from students up through seniors. We have active programs every week. So would like to see you get involved, and by all means, consider joining as a member. These Going Green lectures are part of an important part of what we do every month, but we've got something going on every week for different age groups. I want to shift gears over to rain barrels. That is a hot, in-demand rain barrels throughout the pandemic, and we've been trying to keep up with the order demand. We have had a partner, Rainwater Solutions, for many years, and they have tracked us very well throughout the pandemic, trying to get rain barrels to us as soon as the orders are coming in. And as we stand right now, we're getting 2 more pallets in any day. And they get delivered to John Geiger there at Environmental Services. To order a rain barrel, it's pretty easy. You can go right to the website. There's a rain barrel link to Rainwater Solutions. I believe there's also some tutorials and information about setting up your rain barrel. So if you're new, like my husband and I were to rain barrels a few years back, you can learn quite a bit about rainwater harvesting with the YouTube videos. Nice to have in the Woodlands with a rain barrel purchase of $87, which is quite a bit less than retail. The Woodlands Water gives a rebate for about half of that. And that does require that you live in Montgomery County portion of the Woodlands. But that is available to you. So consider a rain barrel. Everybody's gardening these days and trying to get our gardens back up after the hard freeze. And with rain a-coming, it's a great way to keep your gardens blooming and doing well. So consider rain barrels. I think there's a QR code on this as well. And that also link you to, I believe, directly with the Woodlands Green site, or directly with Rainwater Solutions. But it is on our homepage. Find out some more information. I think that's about all I've got, Paul.
Right. Thank you very much, Deborah. And I said, yeah, the rain barrels, I have at least 3 of them. And I think it's just one thing to show your neighbors that you care, and to conservation. And I'm pretty sure that the plants like rainwater a lot better. So again, at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit more about the Woodlands Green and joining and participating. I want to stress that, again, appreciate people to take the time to do these lectures, but the lecture is just one little piece of the Woodlands Green. There's a lot of things going on, and I think that we have a lot of projects that no matter what you're interested in, we can find a place for you to help this community retain its sustainability. So Teri, I want to go ahead and start the lecture. I will say that Teri is, as she said, a lifetime member of the Woodlands Green. She also is a hero of mine. That I've known her for a long time. I was thinking, Teri, today that it was probably 15 years ago, close to it, that you provided me a space over at the Spring Creek Nature Center to do a water efficiency network talk, one of my first ones, and that kind of started the relationship. And I said I've been happy to know her and appreciate all the work she's done. I'll read this just to make sure I don't mess it up, but she serves the community in her role as a volunteer coordinator and water conservation specialist with the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department, lifetime member of the Woodlands Green, as well as a Texas Master Naturalist in the Heartwood chapter and the Native Plant Society of Texas and the Pines and Prairie chapter, which is a relatively new chapter of the Native Plant Society. And we're going to let her do the I guess you can introduce what you said. We'd like to make sure that you catch all these references that she's going to give you. So pay attention to that. I think we want you to pursue not only what she's going to talk about, but the things that she's referencing. And we'd also like your email address so that we can help send you things about those subjects and then what all is going on in this area of invasive species. So I'll let Teri take over. You've got the slides, Teri, and again, I'd like to hold all the slides are up. I would like to hold questions for Teri until the very end, and if you'll put them in chat, I'll make sure that we relay it to her. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. So yes, we're recording this presentation tonight, and there will be a lot of links in the chat window. If you don't already have your chat window open, you can do that at any time. As Paul said, because there was no registration, we have no way to capture your email address. So if you would like for us to send you by email some of the links I'm going to put up, or you'd like to have the recording link when it's posted, please put your email address in the chat window. Open that little chat icon at the bottom or the top of your screen, wherever it is. No one else can see your email address. Only we see that, and we don't share it. If you have questions during the presentation, type them into the chat window. No one else can see your questions, only we. And we're happy to deal with as many questions as possible at the end. So please put them in there. I will have some resources for you, some links. I think there may already be in your chat window that were entered there a little while ago, but toward the end of the presentation, I'm going to remind you about those, and I'll also tell you a very easy way to be able to save those links without having to copy and paste them. So watch for that, and we'll deal with it at the end. So the question I'd like for us to talk about tonight is, do invasive species matter? But you know, to arrive at an answer to that question, first we have to spend just a minute talking about ecosystems. So you know, every environmental benefit we get from nature, all those services that we don't just value, but that are critical to life on Earth as we know it, are the result of interactions within ecosystems, every one of them. So you know something about interactions within ecosystems. I know you do, or you wouldn't be interested enough to be here. But it's organisms interacting with other organisms, or it's organisms interacting with the non-living parts of the environment, things like air and water and sunlight and minerals in the soil. A great example that everyone knows about is the fact that trees spend all day pulling moisture and elements from the atmosphere, mixing them up with energy from the sun. It's a process that we call photosynthesis. The jury's still out what trees call it because they're not talking, but we call it photosynthesis. And it's how trees feed themselves with their basic food needs. The bonus of photosynthesis is during that process, these trees put their excess oxygen back into the atmosphere for other organisms to use, including us. So it's a critical function of ecosystem interactions that absolutely make life on Earth possible. But trees don't live in a vacuum. That's not the only thing that's going on in an ecosystem with trees in it. Those trees have to have more interactions with other organisms in their ecosystem. Things like soil microbes. They are busy all day, just like the trees, and what they do is help break down organic matter that's worked its way into the soil. They release minerals, break them down, make all those nutrients and all those elements more available for trees to take up in their roots. I mean, trees make some of their basic food needs, but not all. And things, especially like nitrogen, trees are not very efficient at absorbing through their root system, so they need help. That's where these soil microbes come into play. They're not just helping with decomposition within the soil, but they're also creating networks to move those nutrients around, to move water around. They are vital to the overall health of any ecosystem. So that's one set of interactions that trees have. But above ground, those insects and vertebrates that we see that are a significant part of the kickstart of decomposition, they work with fungi and bacteria above ground to start decomposition. They're vital, especially in forest systems where, I mean, the entire forest system could crash because without those organisms to kickstart decomposition, there'd be so much dead stuff on the ground that nothing new could grow. So it's all about ecosystem interactions. So since um, since those trees and those green things are so critical to the health of our environment where we live, it might be logical to think that if it's green, it's good, right? I mean, more green, more oxygen in the air, more environmental benefits, right? Well, then why are these residents from the township out there busy on the pathways and in the green spaces removing green stuff? Let's consider that. Oops, sorry. So essentially, all plants are toxic to insects. Let's concentrate on insects for a minute. Over eons of coevolution, some plants and some insects have developed adaptations so that they can have relationships, they can benefit each other, they can have the kind of interactions that make ecosystems healthy and promote those functions that we need so much. I will suggest that you know very well about one of those kinds of adaptations, and that's monarch butterflies and milkweed plants. Milkweeds are kind of interesting plants. When they are damaged or a leaf is broken or a stem is cut, they exude that very sticky, milky substance. It's actually irritating to our skin for a lot of people, but it's absolutely deadly to insects because that sticky stuff is probably one of the best glues on the entire globe. Any insect that tries to eat milkweed, that stuff glues their mouth parts closed. And they starve to death in fairly short order because they no longer can take in food. So it's kind of interesting that monarchs developed an adaptation so that they could not only use milkweed plants as a place for eggs to be laid, but then they can eat it. They found a workaround. Anybody know what that workaround is? Okay, well, I'll tell you. When the female monarch lays her eggs, it's usually on the bottom of the leaves. The larva eventually emerges from that egg. First thing it does is eat any egg remnants that are there on the leaf because someone's saying there's no more slides. Yes, I'll come back to them in a minute. I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was taking the slides off. But so that larva, when it emerges from the egg, eats the shell, eats the remnants of the egg. It's very nutritious, gives it a good start to give it some health to be able to move around. And the second thing it does then is it crawls down the bottom of the leaf, more or less along that center vein, that midrib, right to the exact point where the leaf attaches to the petiole, that little short stem that holds the leaf up. And on the bottom of the leaf, that midrib is where that monarch larva chews through right to the leaf, but not through the leaf. It has just effectively created a way to prevent the milky, sticky glue stuff from being able to flow from the stem into the leaf. He crawls all the way back down to the tip of the leaf and he can have lunch. There's no more threat that his mouth parts are going to get glued shut. Fortunately, not all insects have learned how to do that. So those milkweed butterflies are kind of unique in that they can use that toxic milkweed plant for a host plant for eggs and for food. But there's a little more to it than that. And here's where we come from ecosystem interactions to invasive plants. What if non-native invasive plants have started growing in an ecosystem that had milkweed before? As you well know, the monarch butterflies that leave from Canada and the northern parts of the United States to migrate south to overwinter in Mexico, those butterflies leaving Canada are not the ones that end up in Mexico. It could be 2 generations, 3 generations, possibly even 4 generations later that butterflies, monarch butterflies, end up in Mexico. But what if? What if invasive species have displaced, choked out, overgrown, or otherwise replaced milkweed? What's a mother to do? Those butterflies don't live a very long life. So as though they're taking leap after leap, generation after generation, moving south, when the female especially realizes she's nearing the end of her life and she needs to get those eggs laid, she's looking for the milkweed that she's always found, that generations have always found along this flyway, along this pathway to the south. If she can't find them, well, she needs to get those eggs laid. Out of desperation, she may lay them on some other kind of plant, on one of the non-native invasives, on something like privet. The larva hatches. It can eat the egg remnants, can get a bit of a start, but as soon as it starts trying to eat that plant, well, it's all about those interactions and adaptations. It has no adaptation to eat that plant that's toxic to it. The larva dies. That generation of monarch butterflies never make it to Mexico. So if there's no host plants, it knocks down the population of monarch butterflies. And we're all aware of the problem that monarchs and many, many other insects are having because of habitat loss. And this is one of the basic reasons. They have co-evolved. Native insects have co-evolved with native plants to develop those adaptations so they can use them. When new plants come into play and replace those natives, there are no adaptations and we begin to lose insects. Well, there's further impacts than that. Let's think about insects as food sources for some of the higher life forms. It's all about interactions again. I'm sure you know that probably 80% of all birds consume insects as some or all of their diet. So what if we begin to lose insects? Those interactions can be fairly specific too. Some birds will only eat some of the insects. So as insects go, we begin to lose bird populations. That has a further impact too. This works its way up the food chain in a domino effect. Let's think about our native resident birds, as well as all those birds that migrate from north to south to overwinter in warmer climates. Now we're talking about insects being gone that they would normally eat. But how about this? Birds are small. I mean, for their size, they hardly weigh anything. You think about some of the smaller birds like, say, a titmouse or a chickadee. A dozen paper clips weigh more than one of those birds. So come wintertime, it doesn't even have to be freezing, but come wintertime when it's cold at night, think about how much shivering a chickadee would have to do to be able to generate the warmth it would take to survive even a 40-degree night. I mean, it's holed up in some hollow of a tree, shivering away, trying to keep itself warm. And the migratory birds, let's think about them. As they work their way south, they're a little like the butterflies in that respect. They need to find the right kind of food to fuel themselves to make that trip. So come colder temperatures, birds are looking for trees, plants, shrubs, vines that flower in the summer, late summer, early fall, so that right at the right moment, as we start moving into colder weather, the berries are ripe enough for them. And those berries from our native plants and shrubs are high in fat content. Exactly what these birds need to build up their fat reserves in their body, build up their fuel level so that if they are staying here over winter, they have enough warmth to survive the cold nights. But if they're migrating, think about that. The minute those migratory birds hit that shoreline just south of us, they're going to launch themselves on a trip that will mean days and days of constant flying over the Gulf of Mexico in hopes of reaching that far shore. No food, no water, no rest, day and night, nothing but flapping their wings, using up all their energy, exhausting themselves in hopes they can get back to land. So when they pass through here, they're looking for our natives, things like wax myrtle and American beautyberry, coral honeysuckle vine, our native viburnums, our native dogwoods, things like hackberry trees, and yes, our most common small tree that some people love to hate, Yopon holly. It has the perfect high fat content berries that our winter birds need to be able to survive the temperatures if they're staying here, and to be able to fuel themselves to make that giant leap across the Gulf if they're moving further southward. Without those berries, if invasives have taken over, displaced them, choked them out, overgrown them, replaced them, and the birds can't find the natives with the high fat content berries in them, will they eat privet berries and Japanese honeysuckle berries and nandina. They'll eat whatever they can find if they're hungry. But those are going to be plants from other climates. They're not from here. They don't make high fat content berries in the winter. They make high sugar content berries even in the winter when they grow here. Sure, the birds will eat them, get a shot of energy, but it won't sustain them. It won't keep them warm in the cold nights. It won't give them the energy and the fat reserves to make that long trek across the Gulf of Mexico. And yeah, I know what you're picturing in your mind, and that's exactly what will happen. Maybe they can even see the land as they're flying across the Gulf. Maybe they know how close they are, but they didn't have enough fat reserves. They didn't have enough fuel. They run out of gas, and yeah, they fall out of the sky dead. So it's a problem. And if we want to keep those birds, and if we want to keep insects that are beneficial, then what are we going to have to do? Well, you already know the problems with invasives. They disrupt interactions within ecosystems. They degrade ecosystems. Those soil microbes alone, when they lose the ability to decompose organic matter and to break down minerals because the plants that they normally associate with, the natives, are no longer gone, those soil microbe groups, those decomposing communities begin to get lost. I mean, they die off. They can't use the new plants any better than the insects above ground can use them. So we end up in a situation where nutrients aren't as freely available in the ecosystem. The entire ecosystem suffers, everything. And as I said earlier, those interactions work their way up that food chain. It's a domino effect. It gets worse as it goes. So what are some of the worst offenders right in our neighborhoods? Well, here's a very short list. The entire list is much, much longer. And if you'll notice, topping this list is air potato vine. It's a toxic plant, very dangerous for kids and animals to eat any part of it. And it's one of the targets from a group of volunteers that, such as those in that photo I showed you a little while ago. They're part of the Invasives task force that have been in operation for a couple of years. There are nearly 200 members strong right now. Of course, 2020 was a year when we tried to keep work groups small, and not all of them work at the same time on the same work days. So I saw Kathy Herrick had checked in earlier. Paul, could you or John unmute Kathy if she's not? And Kathy, would you be willing to share with us your personal experience as a volunteer team leader for the Invasive Task Force Works, and tell us whether you feel as though all that time and energy you've spent has really been worthwhile. Please share with us. You there, Kathy?
I thought so.
There you are.
There I am.
You're on.
Uh,
We can see you and we're waiting to hear you.
it is my passion, and I notice that there are several people in attendance here who it's their passion as well. It is significant impact that we've had. If you really are one of the 88% of the community who respond on the survey that trees are the best part of the woodlands, this is the opportunity for you. The one thing about working on the task force is that you have to Um, once invasive species are a problem, it's or recognized as a problem, it's too late. And that's why we're involved as the task force now. It's a great group of people. I think we're all, it's very empowering to attack a problem in your neighborhood. And that's the way my husband and I started, is we recognized a problem at the end of the cul-de-sac with air potato. 2 people, but we weren't alone. Not long thereafter, Elena Carrillo and Glenn and Melanie Siegert had been working down in Grogan's Mill on a similar problem with air potato. And I think anybody who's participated feels a sense of satisfaction when they remove these invasives, knowing what Teri has told you. It's, but it's not a one-off. And that's the biggest thing. It's something that we have to pursue and continue to pursue. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, it's a passion for me, and quite a few people have become involved with the Woodlands Green because it is the trees that make our community. And we're not Plano, Texas. We are the Woodlands. And if we lose our namesake, we've lost a lot. And that's just the marketing aspect of the Woodlands, not to mention what Teri's referring to as far as the ecosystem interactions.
Well, thank you, Kathy. You know, kudos to you as a staunch supporter, as a committed volunteer, as a great team leader for the task force work days. But just as much kudos to all those who maybe not work every work day with you, but are working in their own neighborhoods on their own team, as their own team leaders, working with you occasionally on work days, and continuing to pursue restoring those pathways where the invasives are taking over and knocking out our beneficial insects, knocking out our birds, changing the soil makeup, degrading the ecosystems that support our trees. So wonderful work. I'll tell you all that 2020, as I said, was a very difficult year. We tried to keep those work groups small, and Kathy did a great job of doing that. Nonetheless, as a group, they spent well over 1,000 volunteer service hours along our pathways, removing invasive species. So, you know, if you could see me clapping and giving them applause, I hope you're joining me, and we'll thank them when you talk to them. Thank you, Kathy. You'll see there are some other local invasive species that are of concern to us. Air potato vine is really our kudzu. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to some place like Tennessee where buildings are green and billboards are green and phone poles are green, because kudzu absolutely grows over everything. Well, here it's air potato vine and a close second, Japanese climbing fern. It's a true fern. It's the only one that grows as a vine here. So if you see a fern growing on a vine up a tree, you know it's the invasive Japanese climbing fern. But what it does to block out light from the trees and shrubs it overgrows is only part of its risk. It dies back in the winter, but the fern, the fronds, the leaves persist along with the vine itself. And that dead matter moving from soil level up into the treetops means if we ever have a wildfire, they make the perfect fuel, so that instead of a wildfire moving slowly across at ground level, it can ladder right up those dead vines into the crowns of the trees, where a wildfire is very difficult, if not impossible, to control. So there's more than just the degradation that happens. There's other concerns. Our privets, oh my gosh, I would challenge anyone to tell me that you don't see Asian privets roadside all throughout the township. In some places, they are the dominant roadside plant. Some of these others we've talked about, some we have not. You'll notice that several of them are toxic to humans, pets. Um, some are skin irritants. And there's one on there that's listed as prohibited. And what that means is Texas Parks and Wildlife has listed it as a state prohibited plant, which means it's illegal in the state of Texas to sell it, distribute it, possess it, move it, or introduce it into a state waterway. If you've ever tried to kayak or canoe in Bear Branch Reservoir mid to late summer and you couldn't even get your boat in the water, very likely it's because the water hyacinth has created huge mats of this vegetation across the reservoir. SJRA has to get in their big airboat and come out, and some is raked and mechanically removed, but most of it is sprayed with a quote unquote aquatic safe herbicide to kill it, which creates an entirely different problem for that body of water as all of that organic material begins to decompose, but that's a story for another presentation night. So if you want more beneficial insects, more butterflies, more birds in our community, in your neighborhood, right in your own yard, there are things you personally can do to help with this. Learn more about invasive species. I believe in your chat box, you'll find that there are some links. The very top one, if you scroll to the top of any of those links, should be titled Quiet Invasion, A Guide to Local Invasive Species. This is an online guide to invasive species of our area that Galveston Bay Foundation maintains. And that project was originally grant funded through HARC, our Woodlands Township environmental research organization right here in our hometown. Occasionally print copies are available, but you can always find it online and learn more about not just the plants I listed, but a lot of the others that are right here in our region. And you'll see that there are even more that are prohibited as you go through that online booklet. If you find those plants right in your own landscape, consider that you might remove them and possibly replace them, say, with some of those plants and trees and shrubs I mentioned earlier that are such great winter berry food for our winter birds. Wouldn't that be a good thing if we added some more fat content berries in our environment? You could attend a class. You'll see on this slide, there are a couple of them coming up, one on June 5th that will deal primarily with aquatic invasive plants, things like that water hyacinth and some others. There's a link to that in your chat window. You can register to attend that. It's an online class. Another coming up in August on the 14th. It'll be a broader look at more invasives of our region and include some of the forest pests, some of the invasive insects that are damaging our trees right here in the region. There's a link to that, and you can use it to get more information and to register. Another online training. There's a link there that says evaluate this presentation. Would you please find that link right now? Open your chat window if you don't already have it open. Find that link, and will you please right now click on that link. It will take you to an evaluation form. It's only 4 or 5 questions. It will take you literally a minute, maybe 2, to complete that form. But we are very, very concerned to know that if we're meeting your expectations in our presentations, if you feel as though you're learning valuable, gaining valuable knowledge, If you are interested in finding out more or making suggestions for ways for us to improve, and most of all, tell us what topics you would like to see addressed for the future. So please use that link. Complete that evaluation form right now while you're here. Remember that if you would like to be emailed all of these links, put your email address into the chat window. We are the only ones who see it. We do not share it, but it's the only way we'll have to know that you want an email with all these links and a link to the recorded version of tonight's presentation if you'd like to watch it again. So enter your email address. Paul and Deborah both talked about joining Woodlands Green. There's a link in there for that. And I want you to consider using the link that's in the chat window that I put there, because it takes you directly to the membership form that's on the Green website. I'm asking you, if you will, and if you're interested in becoming a part of what this great organization does, would you use that link, print off that form, complete it, check off from the list of the various volunteer opportunities that are shown, the things you might be interested in doing, and then will you mail that with your check to join us? That would be a terrific way for us to get to know you better and know how to offer you some terrific volunteering opportunities. I've put my direct email in the chat window. I show it here on the slide, but of course you can't use this as a link. So it's in the chat window, as well as my direct phone number. If you have questions for me or want to open a conversation about the Invasives Task Force, please do that. I didn't put the link in there, but here it is on this slide. But if you go to the Woodlands Township website, and after Woodlands Township-text.gov, if you put /environment, it takes you straight to our environmental services page. And on the right-hand side is an entire list of upcoming events. So you could see what other kinds of things environmental services has to offer. And so many of them are just like the Invasives Task Force. They're collaborations and partnerships between Township Environmental Services and the Woodlands Green. It's a wonderful partnership that we've had for all these years. And if you would like an easy way to save those links right from the chat, at that bottom right-hand corner of the chat window are those three little dots that tell you there are more actions you can take. When you click on those three little dots, it'll offer you the opportunity to save the chat. It moves a text box into the downloads folder of your computer. You can go in later, and when you open that text file, there are those links for you. So if there are any questions, Paul or John, I'm ready for us to address them now.
I don't see any, if John sees any questions or not. I think I do see that all the links have been put on the chat side, and I'll also say that if things go right, which may or may not happen tonight, this is going to be recorded, and then you can go to the lecture link on the Woodlands Green website and go back and not only share this, but you can find the parts that you want to go back to help remind you. But I think, again, I don't see anything. I would add that talking about Kathy and the task force, I first found what I didn't know was an air potato going along a bridge on the nature trail in the woodlands. And I noticed a very tall tree, maybe 35, 40 feet, that was covered with these odd leaves. And when I took the time to pull those leaves off, I found that it was a almost 40-foot tall magnolia tree. Was entirely covered by this weed, I'll call it. And so that's when I started asking questions. And next thing you know, I was bent over picking up potatoes off the ground with Kathy Herrick. So it's not just like, and I think you did an excellent job of pointing out the interactivity of these, you know, from seeds to weeds to trees to berries to birds, and just point out that without some of these things, there'll be no more birds. There'll be no more ability to cross the Gulf and get to South America and back. So it's a critical thing. I think the woodlands obviously is a place that we take great pride in, not just the trees, but the greenways and all the stuff that brings us. And I think it's important. And that's why we ask you to be here tonight. And I would urge you to look into some of these links and certainly look into some of the activities that the Woodlands Green and the township do to try to help eliminate some of these issues. And it is rewarding. I mean, just to at the end of a Saturday, realize that you have done something that's really going to help the environment and the sustainability of this community.
Hey, Paul, I might add as a newbie to the task force, and I've only been involved since the start of this year. And I know Kathy, Terry, and Paul and others have been involved for several years now. I want to encourage everybody, even if you're a newbie, and I view myself as pretty much a lightweight when we're out on the task force work days. I'm still learning the ropes. I'm still trying to distinguish what an air potato is. Yes, I kind of know that one now, but we started work on Chinese tallows at the Shadow Lake Marsh just a couple weeks ago. There will be another work day this Sunday. I found that a little bit more labor intensive, but with the small tallows that maybe are 10 inches tall, I can tackle those. Anyway, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be able to identify all these plants that Terry talked about tonight. You will learn that when you're on site, and you've got some great mentors with Kathy Herrick, especially always on site with you. We have an upcoming event coming up Sundays. I think Kathy could give us some more details on that. But I just wanted to mention, as like I said, a newbie, and I've only been at it since January and still learning the ropes. Don't feel hesitant because you've got no background in working on invasives. You will learn plenty, and it's very gratifying work.
I will say that one of the links in that chat window says, join the Invasives Task Force now. So even though the classes are a little ways in the future, if you use that link and you complete that registration form, I send your information directly to Kathy, and she can include you in notifications about work days so that you'll see when the opportunities come up. And she's terrific at organizing those groups. So if you'd like to get involved even before you attend a class, use that Join the Invasives Task Force Now link and go ahead and sign up. Were there any questions for us to address?
Yeah, I wanted to, I think I just saw, it's not a question, but a statement that there's no link seen to join the task force visible. Can you repeat that link or type it into the chat for us, Terry?
Okay.
I thought they were all there, but it just.
Okay, let me stop sharing so I can get back to the chat window.
While you're looking at that, I would also say that you're right. We do need to take the class to learn about the species specific, but also I feel like it's important to know that if you can use a pair of I guess, really need to know how to use a shovel and some loppers. And if you can do shovels and loppers, you probably can join. I think Kathy will accept you for. You're muted. You're muted, Kathy. Unmute.
If you can just weed, you're welcome. But if you still just are ready to get your feet wet, just take a look at your own yard and make sure you're not purchasing invasive species from the big box stores, which still sell them. And make sure that things don't escape from your yard, because that's what mostly has caused the problems in our green belts.
That's true. I think that was one thing. I never liked them much, but I didn't realize that the ubiquitous elephant ear is considered an invasive, and there's hardly any of us that don't have one of those somewhere. So even those kind of things, and that's what the class that Terry's talking about teaches you, that what's invasive, what's not, and the damage that they do. Did you find it, Terry?
I'm working my way there. I had sent it earlier, and so I had closed it. Just give me a second. I'll put them all back in again.
Yeah, put them all back in if you would. I think while she's doing that, and just in closing, I again appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. In case
Don,
you
there are
can't,
some.
can you talk, Glenn?
I'm sorry, I was talked over you, but I was just saying there are some comments that's showing up in the chat. If you'll click on the chat thing.
All
Yeah.
right, let's see. You can take a look now. I think my information is at the very bottom. Joining the green is another link. There's the link for Join the Invasives Task Force now. If you didn't do the evaluation earlier, I'd still love for you to do that. That will be active for several more days. So you can either use those little 3 dots and save the chat, or if you sent us your email address in the chat window earlier, then I'll send you all these links by email if you prefer. But I think you'll see all those links now as you scroll down in the chat window. Were there any other questions?
No, yeah. Thank you, Glenn. I had strayed away from chat when I was working on the other stuff, but there are some comments and questions, and I will start with, I think it says, since these are such an invasive problem, why are they not prohibited by the state of Texas? You can answer that one, Terry.
Well, those wheels turn slowly. It's not that there aren't groups proposing them. And in point of fact, anyone can propose to the state that they consider adding a plant to the prohibited list, but you need to have really good reasons. An invasive by federal definition is a species that harms or has the potential to cause harm that's either economic, environmental, or risk to human health. So if you want to propose a plant, get your ducks in a row and create a powerful reason why the plant should be prohibited and submit it to the state.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that certainly the state of Texas has, and you mentioned the Hart book, the state of Texas has a pretty good list of invasives. Many of them are aquatic, but you just have to push them and make your point. And I know that the TCQ and others, I mean, the Parks and Wildlife are anxious to get those comments because they can't be everywhere.
I will mention that our classes are now in collaboration with the Texas Invasive Species Institute, which just moved to Sam Houston State University this past fall. So if you go to the website, that's texasinvasives.org, you'll end up with access to lists and lists and lists of invasive plants. You can find a lot of more information about them at texasinvasives.org. And the presenter for those two classes that I showed you and mentioned, June 5 and August 14, the instructor will be Ashley Morgan Olvera from, they call it TISI, Texas Invasive Species Institute at Sam Houston.
Here's not a question, but a obviously very true comment that we hear some about, need to even know more about, and that's without pollinator insects, we will have no food crops. And you could speak to that too. I mean, we've talked about isolated events here, but it's worldwide, and without pollination, we don't get too much.
And so, you know, I just gave you a couple of 3 examples of ways that invasives impact wildlife, starting from soil organisms, working up to things that live on the soil, on the ground, in the air. And so, yes, those pollinating organisms, the beetles, the butterflies, the bees, the bats, the birds, they all have those same interactions and associations and relationships that I talked about when I referenced the monarch. So as invasives displace, choke out, overgrow, and replace our native species, then we lose the insects, including the pollinators, that are so helpful to us in that way. And I don't know if you all have heard the news yet, but as of Tuesday morning, National Wildlife Federation has notified Gordy Bunch that the Woodlands Township has now achieved the official designation as a monarch champion city because of these past couple of 3 years of work to promote improving and adding pollinator habitat within the township. So you're going to be hearing even more about ways to support pollinator habitat. But I mean, what a wonderful designation that we're number 10 in the entire United States, only the 10th municipality to achieve municipal champion city status. So, oh my gosh, you know, pollinators are huge. Let's support them. Let's remove invasives and add in those native plants that those pollinators have relationships with, that they can interact with, that they have adaptations so they can use.
Thank you. And that's right. I think the very important, just one more, I think there's not a question, but a statement that I went to our local native plant nursery and they were selling Nandina and taro, obviously not illegal. They should be. You know, I think obviously with retail stores, big box stores, typically they're going to sell you what you will buy. And as long as there's not a demand for those true native species, and as long as they sell and you buy Nandina and other things like that, I don't think I sent it to Teri, but not too long ago, I sent a picture that my brother sent me of a big giant box at a box store, and it was filled with basically 2-for-1 elephant ear bulbs. So, I mean, this is Austin, Texas, and this store was within 10 miles of the Lady Bird Johnson native plant facility in Austin. So, I mean, it's like, again, we have to just demand that our nurseries not sell this stuff.
And you know, the plants that are not native here that become invasive, even if they're not natives in other parts of the country with different ecosystems, they may not be invasive there. So, you know, free enterprise is such a wonderful thing. If you can sell it, you can sell it. So, you know, ask your nurseries not to stock things that are invasive, that are known invasives. You know, reference that guide to local invasive species when you can. Send a letter to the state, suggest that they prohibit it. Those wheels turn slowly, as I already said. And it's not as though we're not asking for more plants to get listed as prohibited, but it's a process. Meantime, do the best you can in your own environment, be an advocate in your neighborhood, tell people, what they can do. Invite them to join you for classes and to invite them to join you for volunteering. It's all good. I mean, every step, every person involved is a good thing.
And then, like you said, try to encourage and then also support those that you really truly are native plant suppliers. Support them, and that's the only way we can reverse it. Well, thank you so much, Teri. I really appreciate your time, and of course, Kathy, with what you've done to help eliminate, at least slow this process down. I want you to know that there were 43 of you interested folks that took the time to attend this. I appreciate it so much. It's good to know that there's that much interest in this. Just a last plug about the Woodlands Green. I said earlier that this lecture series is just a part of it. And as you've heard here tonight, it's fairly minor part, because the major part is what we go out and do. And we want more people to see what we do, that we're actually walking the walk. I also want to stress that this is just another one of the subjects that we're interested in, the sustainability of the Woodlands area. It's a beautiful place, and we want to make sure it stays that way. And if you're interested in any part of sustainability or environment, there's somebody in this group that's just as interested and would welcome your participation. So go to our website, sign up. It's a real reasonable price to join us. And if you need help with finding some of these links, if we didn't get it clear across, that'd be my fault. And if you would just email us at, is it info@thewoodlandsgreen.org, then we can fill you in with those things that you might have missed. So with that being said,
it was my pleasure to join you all tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Good night, everyone.
Good night, and thanks so much for being. Be safe. See you soon.